Good morning. Welcome inside our studios here in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel. You can also listen to us on the PGA Tour Radio Network on SiriusXM, and we are presented by Century Insurance, right by you. They are so invested in the right things in the game of golf. Their partnership with the United States Golf Association, as well as with the First Tee, and of course, they sponsor the first event of the year on the PGA Tour. We are proud to be aligned with them, as we are with our 3 North Carolina-based companies. Pinehurst Resort, go to pinehurst.com, book a trip. I started going there to golf camp when I was 15 years of age. Some of the greatest memories, moments of my lifetime spent at Pinehurst. Peter Millar, another North Carolina-based company. I've proudly worn their apparel head to toe for 15 years in Golf Pride. The only grip that I've ever used, and players at every level trust Golf Pride more than any other brand of grip in the world. All right, let's get to what we're going to discuss today, because Gabby Herzig is going to join me in just a few minutes from The Athletic. And if you are following professional golf, there is nobody who has broken more news since the beginning of the year than she has. There are a number of things to get to with her. Also, Taylor Zarzour, who just completed his radio program on SiriusXM, is going to be joining me for the last half of the program. I love to kick around a lot of subjects with him, and I will. One of them is going to be the decisions made over the last couple of days by the United States Golf Association and also by the R&A as it pertains to an entry or a point of entry potentially for a LIV player into the U.S. Open and into the Open Championship. And when these were announced, naturally, everyone went, wow, they're getting spots in the U.S. Open and the Open Championship. Maybe. This reminds me a little bit of the scene in Caddyshack when they have Caddy Day and they open the pool from 1 to 115. But here's the caveat as it relates to what I'm talking about here. Yes, you can use the pool from 1 to 115. However, you must have medaled in the 2012 London Games in the 100-meter butterfly in order to get in the pool. Have you really paid attention to what exactly they provided? And let me make it abundantly clear. I'm not for and I'm not against this. What I'm saying is that when it was announced, it seemed like it was a great triumph. It's not even a guarantee. And let me just give you some consideration as it pertains to, first, the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open has a number of exempt categories as a pathway into the U.S. Open Championship, this year being conducted at Brawny, Burley, all grown up Oakmont, which I love. In order for a LIV player to get entry into the U.S. Open, they must be in the top 3 in their standings at this cutoff point in the month of May, if they're not already otherwise exempt into the championship. So consider some of the players who are already exempt. Brooks Koepka, Jon Rahm, Dustin Johnson, Phil Mickelson, Cam Smith. I could go on. There's not many that you would look at and think would be in the top 3 by the time we get to that cutoff point. Yes, there's a few, and look, it's not the full season. It's a handful of events, so we may have somebody who may be somewhat of a surprise. Joaquin Niemann is not exempt into the U.S. Open. He has already received exemptions into the Masters, into the PGA, and he's got an exemption into the Open Championship. The U.S. Open is the one he's not. So what they've been given, maybe, not even a guarantee, is something that 7 different amateur championships or achievements automatically get you into the U.S. Open. The Latin America Amateur Championship, the Mid-Am, the USM winner and runner-up, the McCormick winner, meaning that if you are number 1 in the world amateur rankings at the end of the year, you receive the McCormick Award, which is a great thing. And I think it's a justifiable reason to give that player, over the course of the year, because of accomplishment, a pathway into the U.S. Open. And by the way, that recipient is Luke Clanton. So there's the U.S. Open. Now, the Open Championship, being even more benevolent, they have given top 5 a player who's in the top 5 who's not otherwise exempt into the Open Championship at Royal Portrush. So there's a more realistic chance that somebody who's not already otherwise exempt into that championship is going to get in because of an accomplishment that he has garnered because of his play specifically on LIV. But these are maybes. They're not even a guarantee. So for all of the, my gosh, what a triumph, what an accomplishment, what growth, what progress, is it really? And again, I'm not berating either organization for putting these parameters on it. But what I'm saying is that if we know that 7 different amateur categories exist to automatically, not qualified, there's not a qualifier like maybe you'll get in, which is what this is, maybe. They're in. Oh, by the way, Richard Bland is exempt into the U.S. Open. He's on LIV. You want to know why? Because he won the U.S. Senior Open at Newport Country Club. Which leads me to one of my last points before we take our first break. We have heard different things over the last couple weeks as it relates to progress. But do we know what that progress is? And look, I get it. There's a lot of things that you can't share because of certain things that you just simply can't share. One of those things is the fact that you are involved with the Justice Department, and everyone thinks that that is a more achievable thing to get that through the Justice Department now that the President of the United States is bullish on the idea that this can be accomplished. Okay, that's fine. I think where we're headed is that when we get to the Players' Championship in March, that these announcements are not accidental. Obviously, the United States Golf Association and the R&A, which works with each other in lockstep on many initiatives, starting with the rules of golf, but also championships and governance as it relates to the overall administering of the game of golf globally. They're in constant communication. These are not accidental announcements. One was going to go first, one was going to go next. But here's the other thing. We know that these conversations that are being had by all of the 5 families, so to speak, are ongoing, they're constant, and they're fluid. I think that we are headed toward an announcement on the PGA Tour's grandest stage, which is the Players' Championship, which is 1 month away. We're going to take our first break here. I mentioned Gabby Herzig and all of the great news. You should be following her. You should be reading all the stuff that she writes because she's covering the sport at the highest level that you can. Her thoughts on the things that I just discussed, but also many other items, including a great article that she wrote about Jordan Spieth. Also, right around when Rory won at Pebble Beach, she had a terrific piece about him as well. So Gabby Herzig next, Taylor Zarzour at the bottom of the hour, and you for the entire hour, I hope. We're just getting started on this Tuesday edition. It is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel, and please listen as well on the PGA Tour Radio Network on Sirius XM. Back after this. Back in, it is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel, also on the PGA Tour Radio Network on Sirius XM. This segment is brought to you by Golf Pride. Keep pointing out the Align Max available coming this week. A great new grip, and again, players at all levels. Nobody is trusted more than Golf Pride when it comes to putting your hands on the club. All right, joining me now, I mentioned her work has always been great. She's been reporting incredible stories going all the way back to the beginning of the year when she broke the story about the potential changes to the Tour Championship. That continues, but I have greatly appreciated the things that she has written in the last week or so about Rory McIlroy, about Jordan Spieth. She joins me now from The Athletic. That is Gabby Herzig. Good morning. How are you?
Morning, Gary. Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Always good to have you with us. I know you had a great West Coast trip. I will end with that, but let me start with Jordan Spieth because I've always found him to be such an interesting study, and your piece focused on a couple things that he is challenged by, and one of them is patience. And you pointed out in your piece that patience doesn't have to be a pejorative term. It can be something that can be indicative of somebody who's hyper-competitive. Explain to people the angle that you were trying to write about a guy who continues to evolve now at the age of 31.
Yeah, it's a great question. The angle came from my conversation with Jordan Spieth's coach, Cameron McCormick, and he's actually been coaching Jordan since he was 12 years old, and told me a really great story actually about the first time he met Jordan Spieth. Jordan sat down in his office, and before Cameron could even see him hit a ball, Jordan told him, "I want to win the Masters." So that was kind of the first indication to Cameron that he was dealing with this kind of chronically impatient golfer, but he used that as a positive term to describe Jordan, that restlessness, that willingness to work and do all the things no matter what to get to the results fastest. So I think that's the quality that Cameron is noticing right now in Jordan that's kind of taking a reversed course right now in a little bit of a way. So the wrist injury, the surgery, the road to recovery has actually forced Jordan to become a more patient golfer and more patient athlete than he's ever been before. And Cameron spoke to me about that. And that's something that he's been observing as a coach. It's not necessarily an active discussion that he's having with Jordan, but it's just something that he's noticed over time. And he's actually described Jordan as easier to work with ever than any point in his career, which I thought was fascinating.
You know, Gabby, I used to believe that when athletes would use the term process, it was an outline. I thought it was a way to say something that you're like, okay, I'm not going to delve into that because you're trying to kind of end the conversation by saying, trust the process. It's about the process. That's part of that, isn't it, as it relates to Jordan? And I find the process now to be the most interesting thing, not just about athletes, really about all of us. It is his process that is at the core of this, isn't it?
100%. And there's already been an extensive process from the moment he got that surgery until now. There was the period of even figuring out which surgeon to work with for Jordan. That was a process that he had to take a lot of patience in. He was asking other players like Sahith Theegala, Billy Horschel, who have had similar wrist injuries. There was a period where you can only hit a certain number of balls on the range. He talked about how he had hit Nerf balls for a while because he couldn't feel that contact with a real golf ball for a bit. So Jordan has definitely had to exercise patience in this process, and there is a long way to go. We've seen, obviously, two opposite end results so far in the tournaments that he's played, tied for 69th at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and then T4 at Waste Management, which an incredible performance right out of the gates after the surgery. So there's going to be some peaks and valleys, I believe, in this journey for Spieth, and it's going to be interesting to see for sure.
Gabby, last thing about Spieth, you're the one who asked him the question in his pre-tournament presser at Pebble about goal setting, and he was very transparent. He literally went light item through it. He's already gotten one of those key light items, which was legitimately getting himself into contention. What does your intuition tell you about maybe an alteration of those line items before we get to Augusta National, or do you think he will stay on point with what he told you?
Yeah, I think the key for Jordan right now is honestly just not getting ahead of himself. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just keeps chugging along with those goals. The first one, which you mentioned, of getting himself into contention before the Masters. And then the second main one was throughout the rest of the year playing well enough to make the Ryder Cup team at Bethpage Black. So he's got a lot of work to be done. I think, honestly, if he doesn't stray the course from those goals, that will actually be more beneficial for him, because then he can kind of just continue staying patient and really working on the things that he needs to work on with his coach, Cameron.
Let's get to somebody else who continues to evolve, and that is Rory. You wrote about him, and what's interesting is the manner in which he won. The total result was sensational, but the way he got there was much more methodical, which we do not associate him necessarily with that term. How about him taking a page from kind of the Scheffler playbook and associating boring with greatness?
It was super interesting to see that from Rory. I mean, I thought that actually during the week at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, a lot was made of his drives on the 14th hole and having 7-iron into that par 5 and taking advantage of it with his length off the tee. But that was actually kind of a bit of a red herring for how he played Pebble Beach that week. It was a very disciplined approach. It was a lot of irons off the tee when he could have easily bombed driver down there. Even on the 18th hole when he was 2 shots up and he pulled iron off the tee. That was a decision that we might not have seen from Rory last year or the year before. So exactly what you said. It's been a kind of shift in strategy for Rory, and clearly it's paying off early in the season. It's just a matter of the question of whether he'll keep doing that.
You know, Gabby, because he won the U.S. Open so early and he won it so emphatically, He then went into a period where he didn't play well in the U.S. Open, but since 2017, starting with the tie for 9th at Erin Hills, he's gotten better and better and better. His results are better every year, and he's coming off 2 gutting losses in 23 and 24. Aren't those indications in a microcosm of him accepting that par has great value and that methodical is a method to greatness?
100%. And I think, honestly, the main inspiration for this, at least in this season and this year, is Scottie Scheffler. And Rory was actually open about that throughout the week, and especially during his post-tournament press conference. He basically said when someone like Scottie Scheffler is playing that well, you can't help but take note of what they're doing to succeed. And one of the things that Scottie Scheffler does so well is picking conservative targets, playing the golf course methodically, strategically, not getting too far ahead of himself. Honestly, the whole conversation really reminds me of Scott Fawcett's decade golf system. It's a course management system about picking the appropriate lines for your game. And I think Rory isn't really open about the fact that he uses statistics and he's never really been a numbers guy, but I think he's starting to think in those ways about playing strategically and really picking those lines and staying to his game plan the whole week.
All right, Gabby, I go back to last fall. You're the first person who wrote extensively about the challenges associated with the Tour LIV alignment merger, call it whatever you want. You talked to constitutional scholars, and that was kind of a framework of what it was that both parties and all parties were dealing with. Now here we sit in the middle of February, and based on what you're hearing, what you're reading, and what you're seeing, do you feel like there is some type of finish line rapidly approaching?
I do. I don't think it's definitive. Again, I know just as much as everyone else, but the most recent signal of Jay Monahan meeting with President Trump, Adam Scott being in that meeting as well in the Oval Office, is definitely a positive sign for the road to golf coming back together and healing that fracture, but it's definitely not over yet. The fact that they actually are asking President Trump for his assistance, and they didn't mention it in the statement, but this is clearly alluding to the U.S. Department of Justice investigation of the PGA Tour PIF deal and those negotiations. So it's really just another kind of Easter egg in this whole process. I think the reason why we're seeing these little tidbits of information come out one by one is because the PGA Tour, I think, had to have been very careful about what they say in the public eye while this antitrust review is going on. You don't want to rub the Department of Justice the wrong way at any point in this process, especially before the election when they didn't really know how things were going to pan out, with which administration would maybe be more favorable to a deal. So there's definitely some steps that they had to take to be careful and make sure they were saying the right things in the public eye. And obviously now things have changed a bit with President Trump sitting in the Oval Office.
So this would have been a Tiger Tuesday. He would have spoken to the media. It would have been 30, 35 minutes. He announced right after we went off the air yesterday that he's going to pass. The process of grieving for him, the passing of his mom, just too much to engage right now. But had he spoken, there would have been questions about this. There would have been questions about his schedule. What do you think are the most interesting things that people who cover the sport and in turn want to deliver to the consumer about what is on his mind? What would be the 2 things that you would find to be most pertinent to get from him right now?
100%. I think, obviously when Tiger speaks, we listen. I think the number one thing I would be curious to hear from Tiger about is, obviously, there's a lot of signs pointing towards this deal between the PGA Tour and the Public Investment Fund actually finally happening. The next step is, how does that actually help the divide and the fracture in pro golf right now? And I think that's a huge question of how we are going to bring this thing back together. And I would be curious to know what Tiger's vision for professional golf in the next 5 years looks like. We've heard Rory McIlroy, who obviously he works closely with, speak about the idea of a global tour, a scarcity model, a Champions League-esque format for pro golf. So I would be curious if Tiger echoes some of those sentiments. And then also just the state of his body, how he's healing from this back surgery, how his muscles are working, how he's feeling back home playing golf in Florida. I'm sure his mind is elsewhere right now with the passing of his mother. We've heard that he's having obviously a tougher time recovering from that, having to pull out of this week's event at the Genesis, his host event. So there are a lot of things that I'd be appreciative to hear from Tiger right now, but I know that it might be a little bit until we actually do hear from him.
All right, last thing, you're coming off your own West Coast swing. You were a college golfer, for people who don't know that. You had a special experience. Just give everybody in a minute what it was like to play Cypress Point for the first time as somebody who has loved golf essentially your whole life, young life.
Yes, it was honestly a dream come true to even be able to step foot on that property, let alone play the golf course. I'll give a quick shout out to my caddy. His name was Paul, and he really gave me the full golf course architecture experience, describing to me over every single shot what Alistair McKenzie wanted you to feel, what he wanted you to see, what shots he wanted you to be tempted to hit. So I really got the entire kind of full circle experience of this golf course and how special the piece of property is from a design perspective. And I'll cherish the day forever, Gary. It was truly special.
There really is nothing quite like it. There's a great book Jeff Shackelford wrote. You can buy it actually in the pro shop, that leather-bound book. It's a beautiful book. We've got it right here in our studio. Thank you as always. Enjoy the time at home. I know you'll be back on the road soon enough, and we look forward to doing this again soon enough. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Okay, there is Gabby Herzig again. Follow her on her social handles. If you want to know what's going on in golf and professional golf, read all of her stuff at The Athletic. We take a quick break. Taylor Zarzour is going to join me, the host of The Starter, on the PGA Tour Radio Network. We got a lot to cover with him. Good to have you with us on this Tuesday. It is Five Clubs, back right after this. Welcome back in. It is Five Clubs on Golf Channel. You can also listen to us on the PGA Tour Radio Network on SiriusXM. The man who precedes us at 7 a.m. Eastern Time is joining me now. He's headed right from here to host the Hood Hargett Breakfast Club. If you're from Charlotte, you'll get that reference. That, of course, the host of The Starter, Taylor Zarzour. Look at you. Jury duty?
Shout out to Sammy and David Hood, by the way. Thank you for the Hood Hargett shout out there. We're moving out of our house today.
Today.
All right, and so it was either
You're not leaving the city of Charlotte.
No, we're staying in Charlotte, just moving elsewhere in Charlotte. Yes. But it was either wear this or wear my sweatpants. And listen, as big a topic as sweatpants and sweatshirts have been in recent weeks, it was close. But the opportunity to outdress Gary Williams on a Tuesday.
I don't know, this four-ply cashmere V-neck, it ain't bad from Peter Millar. No. All right, let's get to something I talked about, and I know you have, because look, I don't think there's anybody, and I listen and try to read as much as I can, who's had more conversations about LIV and its impact on professional golf than you have. You do it every single day on your program. And I was talking about trying to assess what it is exactly that the USGA and the R&A have done here. The R&A, it's anybody in the top five, not already otherwise exempt, will get an entry into the Open Championship. For the USGA, it's top three. What is your assessment of what these two organizations have done?
I was surprised by it. And the reason I was surprised by it is because I feel like it's giving some extra legitimacy to a league that has really struggled to find any credibility in the last 4 years. And you could argue, as we sit here right now, Gary, they're struggling more than they've ever struggled before in terms of reaching new people and people connecting to their tournaments each week. They had a halftime show this past week during their nighttime debut of the 2025 season in Riyadh. There were only barely over 10,000 people that watched the tournament, and they stopped play to have some sort of musical entertainment in the middle of the event. It does not feel like a real competitive event. I think you would agree with that. It feels much more like exhibition golf. It feels more like TGL, honestly, than it feels like the PGA Tour. And so the fact that the USGA and the R&A are going to give someone or a number of players, if they're not already qualified, and you wisely stated, most likely they're already qualified.
Most likely.
But you're going to give a guy like Dean Burmester or Joaquin Niemann or someone else, Taylor Gooch, that's played well on LIV, access to the National Championship of the United States and the Open Championship based on their play in that league. I'd be totally fine if they said, you know what, Joaquin Niemann's one of the best players in the world. Like they do at Augusta National, we're going to give him a special exemption into those majors. I think everybody would be fine with that. They want to see the best players play. But the fact that they're getting that exemption possibly through their play on LIV, that's surprising to me, especially given where the league is right now in 2025.
Yeah, the Niemann thing, and you accurately pointed it out. I think that there are dynamics to that. One, he won the Latin American Amateur Championship, so there is a connection to the Augusta National Golf Club that he has that others don't necessarily have. I also think his accomplishments, in particular in Australia, are things that they weight, and they have a weightiness to them that augments kind of his resume of accomplishment. Here's the thing about it, which is why I get what you're saying. Look, being entertaining is one thing, but to me, elite championship golf is 72 holes of a competition. It's not 54 holes. And as it relates to the lights thing, lights, to me, I found that to be lame as hell. I really did. And if you want to do, again, exhibitions at night, I get it. If you have a match and it eventually falls under the cover of darkness, you're reaching for things that are not relatable to me as somebody who follows championship golf.
So why are you going to give them a possible exemption into the National Championship and into the Open Championship based on their play in that environment?
Yeah, I think the way I would answer that is that they know where this is all going, that the détente is happening as it relates to the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, which has already provided a pathway back to a lot of these players, including Tyrrell Hatton, who's already won on the DP World Tour. I think that all of this, and again, you tell me your thoughts, Gabby Herzig was just on, and she's covered this as well as anybody. I feel like the Players' Championship is going to be the announcement week. They're going to give LIV that platform of the announcement.
Well, Rex Hoggard here on Golf Channel in the last couple of days has suggested that it's going to be done by the end of the first quarter, in the first quarter of the calendar year, which ends March 31st. And so the timing would work out well if you're suggesting that Jay Monahan or someone with the PGA Tour, maybe it's Jay Monahan and it's Yasir Al-Rumayyan that are together in Ponte Vedra making this announcement. It would make a ton of sense to do it there, and if it is going to happen in the next 4 to 8 weeks, that'd be the perfect place to announcement. Listen.
It's the only place in my estimation for this reason. One, this is about the PGA Tour. All these other things we're talking about, I get it. It's part of the greater ecosystem of professional golf, the R&A, the USGA. But this is a PGA Tour challenge, and it has been. And it's diminished their product while this existential threat has gained some type of modest foothold to whatever degree around the world. They'll have a big audience this week. Here's the other thing. There's a halo around the Masters tournament. You're not going to encroach upon that event that immediately precedes it or immediately afterwards. You agree?
I totally agree. And yeah, it would make a ton of sense at the premier event for the PGA Tour to make that announcement in Ponte Vedra. And since you think that's going to happen, I announce right now that Gary and I will both be at the Players this year doing the starter on SiriusXM PGA Tour Radio that entire week. How about that?
Are we both going to wear suits? I'll even add an ascot.
Chances are you will be overdressed and I will be underdressed since it is a radio program. But yes, we will both be there.
All right, we will continue with the man who is headed to either jury duty or a funeral. We hope not. That's the case. Much more to get to with him, including Spieth and Rory. Great to have you with us on a Tuesday. It's 5 Clubs. We're back right after this. Welcome back in. Good to have you with us on this Tuesday. Always great to have a contributor here to 5 Clubs, Taylor Zarzour, the host of The Starter on the PGA Tour Radio Network, which you can listen to us if you're leaving your home right now on SiriusXM. He will be down doing PGA Tour Live for the Genesis. Let me get a quick thought from you about the Genesis, but I do need to mention Pinehurst Resort, one of the great partners we're lucky enough to have. You and I.
Yes.
Next Friday at number 10, big boy.
I cannot wait. I haven't been there yet, so I'm looking forward to getting in Custer in your pocket next week.
Again, it was voted the best new public golf course in America. There's always a good reason to be at the Pinehurst Resort. PGA Tour Live, the new production studios. Wow. I hear that there are green rooms for the green rooms.
There are, yes. I think that I have 2 rooms dedicated to myself. If you'd like to come down for a few days, you can join us.
I'm going to see it during the Players.
In all seriousness, it is the nicest studio that any network that's connected to a league has in the world.
That's what I've heard from everybody.
The NFL Network, I don't mean any disrespect to the NBA or MLB Network or anybody else, but they have created the standard now in studio space. It is remarkable.
Well, and they're adding all these different feeds and different ways for people to consume this product, which is, again, I like it. There are different likes for everybody, and that includes creating, if you're into wagering, creating a way for you to get information on a real-time basis. Who are you working with this week? Billy Kay?
Oh, no, James Nitties will be next to me, and somebody that used to be this close to you, Robert Dameron, will be on the ground for us.
I hope he's not that close to you.
He's going to be on the ground for us at Torrey Pines. So we're excited. Look, it's an A field this week, very similar to what they had at Pebble Beach. It almost was an A+ field with Tiger Woods. Certainly understand why he's not playing, and that is a very difficult thing to go through. I wonder, Gary, if we don't see him play competitive golf until the Masters. I would think he would like to play the Players for all the reasons you just referenced in the previous segment, but if history is any indicator, he won't. He hasn't played there in 6 years.
Right.
So
that was a question I was going to ask you, so you just handled it right there. You'd like to think that in the absence of being able to play the Genesis, that maybe, and people have suggested, well, Bay Hill, he got more success there. Times change things. And the Players, to me, is a much more practical start for him than Bay Hill. You agree with that?
Well, I do, because in the last 5 or 6 years, he's become an exceptional target golfer.
He's a point-to-point guy.
And the TPC Stadium, Sawgrass Stadium course is the ultimate point-to-point golf course.
No question.
It requires precision on every shot, and he's very good at that. You basically are playing a par 3 off the tee into the fairway, and then a par 3 from the fairway to the green there. Bay Hill's a different situation. You can bomb and gouge if you need to, which he did an exceptional job of. Torrey Pines, another one of his personal playgrounds through the years, he did a great job of that. I don't think his body can handle gouging anymore like it did in his prime.
I'm with you. Look, if you go back to when he won at the Players, he was in his late 30s. He was evolving kind of like Michael Jordan did. Tiger became more of the tactician as opposed to undressing any place that he played. Someone who is there. Let's get to 2 guys. Let's start with Spieth. What did you take away in a very positive way about his start in Phoenix?
Well, first and foremost, how much we've missed him. He's just electric. And all of the Spiethian type shots that he hits around the course, the ultimate one probably being the last Spiethian shot on 17 amongst the people to hit that kind of shot from that place. As Billy Horschel said on social media, people don't understand. If you've stood right there at the base of that grandstand, as I have, and looked to that back left hole location with water everywhere and a bunker that comes into the middle of the green back there, it's incredible that he pulled off that shot. But we've missed that. We really have.
Yeah.
And I think that professional golf needs Jordan Spieth near the leaderboard. I took a lot from it, honestly. I know that he typically plays well there, but to see him play consistently well over 4 days and trust his entire game, I thought that was a really good sign. I'm a little nervous about what he said about feeling something in his wrist during the Pebble Beach tournament a couple of weeks ago. My big hope for him this year is that when he makes contact with the ground, no matter what kind of shot he's trying to pull off, that he's not thinking about his wrist. If he has freedom, mental freedom out there playing golf, then I think Jordan Spieth's one of the 10 to 15 best golfers in the world.
If you just looked at the result from this year to last year, I get why people go, well, it's basically the same thing. Why is it different? It is different.
Yeah.
It's the manner in which he did it. His iron play was reminiscent of what it was when he was truly, not for a half a season, for 3 seasons, among the 5 best iron players in the world, from 15 to 17. And he was at this past week.
Yeah, and I think the golf swing looks as solid as it has in many years. If you combine what you just said with improved play off the tee, which we've seen the last couple of years, this guy has been much better getting the ball in play than he ever has been before. You put all that together, we're going to have some big moments with Jordan Spieth. I predict he'll win a tournament this year. I predict
you did. Before this, you said at the beginning of the year.
I predict he'll make the Ryder Cup team. Okay. I'm bullish on him this season.
I will say, though, it does kind of break my heart a little when you see somebody break up with a putter, because everybody does, with the exception of very few. And for him to replace that Cameron Gamer, and look, I love TP Mills. Their stuff is fantastic, and it looks very similar, but it's kind of like when Tiger brought out that quasi-half mallet.
You didn't like that.
You go, well, come on, what are we doing? Don't do that.
Zach Johnson, when the Seymour-looking putter got benched, or Brandt Snedeker benched his gamer, it's like a divorce. I mean, it feels like
everybody divorces their putter in this game except for Brad Faxon, Ben Crenshaw, and Bobby Jones.
That's it.
That's it.
That's the end of the
list.
list.
I thought Spieth, Tiger, again, it was just a separation. They reconciled, and he's back with his gamer.
If you can't tell, Gary will not be going like this
ever
at Pinehurst number 10.
Not at Pinehurst, not ever. Just put me in the ground if I pull out a broomstick. How about Rory? The win at Pebble was, he showed flair when you kind of needed a little shot of it. His tee shots on 14, the majestic 7-iron into there. Just consider that Gary Woodland hit all he had in June under that marine layer when he won the U.S. Open. Just crazy. But the way he did it, that to me is why you walk away going, okay.
The biggest takeaway from me was I saw some Scottie Scheffler qualities in Rory McIlroy's win. And Rory had addressed that publicly a number of times. He said, if you watch a guy like Scottie the last couple of years go on this historic type run, you have to ask yourself, what is he doing that I'm not doing? And the answer is he's playing the smart shot. If you can take on a shot like he could off of 14T when he has this massive wind behind him and full send down the right side of the fairway, then go right ahead. But if you have a shot that requires more accuracy and there's more risk involved with that shot, Rory McIlroy showed me something I haven't seen in the past, which is I'm taking bogey out of play here. There are way too many squares, as we say in the game, on his scorecard, especially on Thursdays and Fridays in these biggest tournaments. He eliminated those, Gary. He hit the smart shot when it was supposed to be played, which Scottie Scheffler's the best in the world at, hitting it to the right side of the green, the correct side of the green. I saw a lot of that from Rory McIlroy at Pebble, which, look, I already thought he was going to win a major championship in 2025.
Yeah, about 5 miles from here.
Well, I mean, come on, it's his personal playground.
Yes.
But I see a guy that seems to have more belief and is wising up a little bit on the golf course, which makes me even feel stronger about his chances.
Yeah, he's been great in the U.S. Open, which is the most methodical, deliberate way you got to play. He's had the best record because he's been gutted the last 2 years. You lose sight of the fact that since 2017, that was a tie for ninth, he's gotten better every single year in that championship.
He has, but the thing that bothered me last year is the driver on 18.
No, I'm with you.
On the 72nd hole, you don't need to hit that club.
Yes, I agree with that. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, some thoughts on the fact that Tiger is not there and the other things that are needed as it relates to Bethpage. We're back right after this. We are back on Five Clubs. This segment brought to you by Peter Millar, a commitment to quality and style for the past 20 years. So proud to be in line with them since 2011. I know you were ensconced in the crown
always
on a day-to-day basis. Let me ask you about Europe's start to the year.
Wow.
Just look around the world and value live any way you want. Adrian Meronk was in that conversation, and he might be again. The markers that they have laid down, and then compare that to kind of the early malaise of the United States.
Yeah, I have the Ryder Cup standings in front of me right now.
You always do.
For the American team, which I'll get to in just a minute. Luke Donald, the European Ryder Cup captain, I think he'd like to press play right now on the Ryder Cup because his team is peaking. To the start of the year, Rory McIlroy, Thomas Dietrich, Sepp Straka, Tyrrell Hatton winning on the DP World Tour. He's been better on the DP World Tour since going to LIV than he was even before that.
You're not exaggerating.
Yeah.
He's lived inside the top 6 at events going back to last fall. He won the Dunhill. He plays well in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. You're right.
Shane Lowry finishes second at Pebble Beach. Justin Rose is off to a good start. You just referenced Meronk winning on LIV. Jon Rahm finished second. You would think almost all of those players I just named will be on that team. Robert McIntyre looks pretty strong to start the year.
Guards?
Yeah, give me any of them. They've both been
Would you
great.
like a Norgard?
I can't tell the difference between them, but both of them seem to be equally as good. You compare that or contrast that with the American team. Scottie Scheffler we haven't seen much of yet. First 2 starts, a really poor back 9 on Sunday. Xander Schauffele hasn't played any golf, and who knows when he will. We have to have Bryson DeChambeau on that American team without any question. Colin Morikawa makes me confident. He's played exceptionally well the last couple of years, and he's been consistent. Billy Horschel is 5th in the standings right now. Never been on a Ryder Cup team.
Nope.
Russell Henley is 6th. Russell's a steady player. But then after that, Harris English just won 3 weeks ago. Brian Harman. Wyndham Clark's down to number 9. Where is Patrick Cantlay gone? He's down to number 10, and he hasn't been a factor to win a golf tournament in quite some time. Yeah, to your point, Gary, there are a lot of question marks with this team. Now, listen, we are 7+ months away from going to Bethpage, and all of this can change with more than half a year to go. But right now, today, without a shadow of a doubt, the European team is the favorite in the Ryder Cup.
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah, and again, you're making a team a favorite in a sport where we don't associate home field advantage of being a big deal, but it is. It's the best home field advantage in all the sports.
Yeah.
That's hard to believe. But you're right, the combination of all these guys in these winless droughts simultaneously, like Thomas, like Spieth, which is encouraging for both of them. Morikawa, same thing, even though he's played exceptionally well. And then you had guys who 2 years ago were going, they're going to be staples. And I'm talking about guys like Max Homa and Cameron Young.
Yeah.
And Wyndham Clark, and Will Zalatoris, who's coming off an injury. It's an interesting time, certainly, for the U.S. We come back, some final thoughts, get you set for a Wednesday on 5 Clubs. We're back right after this. All right, tomorrow, George Waters has written a new book called Sand and Golf. I've read it. It's fantastic. He's going to join me, and also Tyler Ray, a terrific, talented young golf course designer, is going to join me in studio as well. Looking forward to that. You're headed to Ponte Vedra. We will announce our picks tomorrow. You've gotten off to quite a sluggish start.
Am I in the basement? Do I get to go first?
Yes, you and Gil Hance. What a pillow fight this is.
By the way, Gil got his pick in like on Monday last week because you were giving him so much grief for when the picks come in. I would love to say I'm picking Ludwig Oberg, who I think is a great player no matter where you go, but especially at Torrey. But I'm a little worried how banged up he got from that illness a few weeks ago. Sahith Theegala's great in Southern California.
He's gotten off to a bad start this year.
I'm picking Rory McIlroy.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah,
Chalk.
You're telling me I get 5 times to
Yes,
pick these guys?
five times with Rory.
Yeah, I'm going to have to use one of my spots here. I'm going to have to get some points this week, and Rory hopefully will have a top 10.
Yeah, if I will say this, and we talked about this when he won at Pebble. Look, the earliest he'd ever won on the PGA Tour was March 4th of 2012. If he lays down 2 markers before March 1st, he will come to the state of Florida like a freight train.
Yeah.
Have a good week down there in Ponte Vedra.
You too, my friend.
All right.
I'm going back to my sweats as soon as the show's over. By the way.
Is it the full Malbon head to toe look? Wear the hoodie going
It's only
through TSA.
$148 for a sweatshirt. I mean, it's great.
You will be treated like Luke Wilson.
Yeah.
In old school.
Shackled.
Yes, you will. It's great to have him in here. Have a great Tuesday. Again, tomorrow on Wednesday, great golf course designer and the book club. Have a great day, everybody.